The laughter echoed through the Imperial command deck like thunder across a dry canyon. Grand Marshal Tavrik leaned back in his bone-carved throne, his fangs gleaming wide, eyes narrowed with amusement as the human broadcast looped again on the viewing screen. A human child danced with a broom in front of a collapsing shed, a viral video Earth's networks had sent across the stars as part of their culture-sharing campaign. Primitive and proud of it. Tavrik scoffed, his armored tail flicking with contempt. They celebrate disorder like it's a strength. The Vari elite flanking him chortled obediently, though one officer flinched when Tavrik's claw tapped the control panel. A holographic model of the Sol system materialized before them, sleek planetary rings, resource-rich belts, and at its heart, Earth, spinning in serene ignorance. "Are we still pretending this world matters?" Tavrik asked, his voice thick with sarcasm. "Officially," replied Minister Relath, a silken-voiced Andari diplomat. "They are a protected development zone under Article 37 of the Expansion Accord." Tavrik growled low in his throat. "Then let's expand the definition." He tapped the model with one razor-sharp claw. The motion sent an activation signal to the Severance fleet already en route. "Send them. All of them. Let's remind these monkeys why the stars speak in our tongue." On the dark side of the moon, beneath meters of rock and shielding, Commander Elias Rain stood in silence inside Luna Command's primary observatory. The Imperial fleet's arrival had just appeared on long-range scanners, a slow ripple of green contacts, hundreds of ships neatly organized between Jupiter and Saturn. 300 vessels, muttered his aide, Lieutenant Vass, her voice tight. "All Dreadnought class, and one core world flagship. They're not here to talk." Elias didn't reply immediately. He watched the screen, eyes locked on the massive Imperial vessel labeled Tormentum Rex. He'd seen it before, in images from the Mars incident, where the Empire's so-called agricultural stabilization mission left half a colony cratered. He still remembered the silence in his wife's voice just before that feed cut out. Hannah had been aboard the orbital lab above Mars, running experiments on low-gravity mineral folding. Her last message had been routine, almost dull. Then static. Then nothing. Elias adjusted his collar and cleared his throat. "Maintain passive scans? No weapons lock." "Not yet." Vass turned sharply. "They're pushing hard. You really think Command will stay quiet?" Elias gave a tired smile. "Command doesn't want war. They want time. Let's buy them some." The Empire's declaration came not as a demand, but as a performance. A wideband transmission interrupted every screen across Earth. Tavrik's towering frame filled the airwaves, clad in gold armor that shimmered like fire. Behind him stood his officers, tall, reptilian, silent. "People of Earth." Tavrik's voice boomed in dozens of languages simultaneously. "You have played long enough in the dust. The stars are not your sandbox. They are a fortress, and they are ours. Lay down your weapons. Dismantle your fleets. You will be absorbed, not erased. Obedience will bring prosperity. Resistance will bring silence." On Earth, outrage flared like wildfire. Social feeds lit up with panic and parody. Hashtags exploded across every platform. Hashtag no to Empire. Hashtag we will not kneel. And the curious, cryptic hashtag Umbra rises. Theories spun fast and wild. Someone claimed Earth had a fleet hidden under Antarctica. Another insisted teleportation technology was already in play. At Luna Command, General Mara Patel entered Elias's office, her expression unreadable. "They seized Titan Station," she said without preamble. "Forced our ambassador to sign an access treaty. No casualties, just humiliation." Elias took a slow breath. "That's their warning shot." Patel nodded grimly. "We either surrender publicly or show our teeth." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "What's the signal from Home Command?" She placed a thin data chip on his desk. A single word blinked on the screen: Umbra. "Stand by." Later that night, Elias stood alone in the secured vault beneath the Mare Tranquillitatis. There were no windows here, only cold silence and coded locks. Before him floated a small black cube, innocuous, beautiful, deadly. He tapped it gently. A hologram flickered to life, not of warships or tactical data, but a woman's face. Hannah, younger, alive, animated with the fierce excitement he'd fallen in love with, lecturing a room of blank-faced engineers. If we can bend the gravity while using quantum displacement matrices, we're not moving through space, but around it. We're no longer bound by distance. Not jump gates, not time lag, just intent. She laughed softly in the recording, that musical sound he hadn't heard in 20 years. But they'll never believe it until we vanish right in front of them. The feed cut abruptly. Elias stood motionless in the darkness, the weight of 2 decades pressing down on him. No one else had seen that file in all those years. He walked toward the console and opened a command channel. "Activate Umbra fleet," he said calmly. "Bring them into low Earth orbit. Silent mode. No broadcasts." "You're sure?" Vass's voice crackled through the static, hesitant. "We'd be violating 3 Imperial pacts. They violated Mars. They mocked our patience. They forced our hand." A pause, heavy with the weight of history turning. "Understood." Within the hour, across Earth's upper atmosphere, space warped. Not with fire or noise, but with a shimmer, subtle as heat rising from summer pavement. 37 ships emerged as if stepping through thin veils of water, jet black, sharp, shaped like obsidian daggers. They floated without signal, without motion, without sound. No one saw them arrive. No one even looked up. And far beyond, at the edge of Jupiter's orbit, Tavrik leaned back in his throne once more, sipping from a crystalline goblet filled with victory he hadn't yet earned. "Earth hasn't responded," his aide said nervously. Tavrik snorted with satisfaction. "They're stunned." "Good. That means they'll kneel soon." He watched the rotating image of Earth on his display, so small, so proud, so beautifully doomed. "Let them kneel. Then we teach them why empires never laugh last." Titan Station drifted in quiet defiance above Saturn's largest moon, its silver lattice gleaming against the pale haze of nitrogen clouds below. For decades it had been neutral ground. Treaties signed, disputes cooled, wars delayed. That illusion ended the moment the Imperial boarding craft locked onto its hull. Ambassador Lena Cortez felt the vibration through the floor before the alarms sounded. She straightened her jacket, already knowing what the red lights meant, what they had always meant when dealing with the Empire. "They're not requesting clearance," her aide whispered, voice trembling. "They're cutting in." "I know," Cortez replied, steady despite the knot tightening in her chest. "Open the chamber doors. Let them come." The Vari Marines entered in perfect formation, armored hides reflecting the station lights, weapons angled downward, not in peace, but in confidence born of 1,000 conquests. Their commander stepped forward and placed a thin data slate on the negotiation table. "By authority of the Galactic Empire," he said, voice flat and rehearsed, "you will authorize full Imperial access to Sol system infrastructure." Cortez glanced at the slate, then at the soldiers surrounding her, their presence a cage of implied violence. "And if I refuse?" The commander tilted his head, a gesture learned from humans and weaponized against them. "You won't." Minutes later, the transmission reached Luna Command. Elias Rain watched the footage in silence, every frame burning itself into his memory. The camera angles showed Cortez's hand shaking as she pressed her biometric seal against the slate, her face a mask of controlled fury and helplessness. "No blood, no violence," Lieutenant Vass said quietly. "Just compliance forced by presence alone. That's annexation." Elias leaned back, fingers interlaced. "They crossed the line. They crossed it on purpose," Vass added. General Patel's image appeared on the holotable, her expression grim as carved stone. "Imperial High Command claims it was a protective measure. They're daring us to respond. They're counting on fear. On us choosing safety over dignity," Elias said, finishing her thought. Patel nodded once. "Umbra authorization is on my desk. Once I sign, there's no hiding it anymore." Elias looked toward the reinforced window, Earth hanging blue and fragile in the distance, beautiful and vulnerable and worth everything. "We didn't build Umbra to hide forever. 22 years earlier, the world had looked very different. The lab was small, cluttered with handwritten equations and half-built prototypes that looked more like abstract art than science. Elias, younger and far less certain of anything, stared at the simulation spinning above the table. The space inside the model twisted, folded inward, then vanished completely. "That's impossible," he muttered. Hannah Rain grinned, eyes bright behind protective lenses smudged with fingerprints and genius. "No, it's just unexpected. You're telling me we don't move the object?" Elias said slowly, trying to wrap his mind around the concept. "We move the space around it." "Exactly," Hannah replied, adjusting the parameters with practiced ease. The model reappeared across the room without crossing the space between. "Distance only matters if you travel through it." Elias laughed, half in disbelief, half in the terrifying joy of discovery. "The Empire spent 40,000 years perfecting jump gates." Hannah crossed her arms, that defiant spark in her eyes. "Then maybe they stopped asking better questions." The first test destroyed half the lab. The second collapsed a localized gravity well and nearly took them with it. The third worked perfectly, beautifully, impossibly. They named it the quantum displacement drive. Then they buried it, classified it beyond classification, and prayed they'd never need it. In the present, beneath the Pacific Ocean, steel doors thicker than a battleship's hull slid open with the inevitability of fate. Power surged through dormant systems that had waited in silence for 2 decades. Crews moved without chatter, each knowing their role by heart, each carrying the weight of what was about to unfold. In orbit, space folded silently, elegantly. One by one, the Umbra ships emerged from nothing. They did not burn fuel. They did not announce themselves. They simply were, existing suddenly where they had not been before. 37 vessels took position around Earth, dark shapes against the stars, each one armed but restrained, lethal but patient. Their commanders waited for instructions that had been drilled into them for years, contingencies they'd hoped would never become reality. Elias's voice came through the encrypted channel, calm and familiar as a prayer. "Umbra Fleet, this is Commander Rain. You are active. Maintain stealth protocols. No engagement unless I give the word." A chorus of acknowledgments followed, brief and controlled, professional voices concealing racing hearts. Vass exhaled shakily. "They're really there." Elias nodded, watching the displays. They always were. At the edge of the system, Imperial sensors flickered with anomalies. A junior technician frowned at his console, uncertain whether to report what might be nothing. "Marshal, I'm seeing intermittent distortions near Neptune. No mass signature, no radiation spike, just interference." Tavrik interrupted without looking up. "Yes, sir, but—" "I said interference," Tavrik snapped. "Humans barely manage cloaking fields. They certainly don't bend spacetime." The technician swallowed hard and returned to his station, making a note in the log that would later haunt him. Tavrik rose and addressed his officers with supreme confidence. "Earth will comply. They always do. Prepare Phase 2 operations. Resource extraction begins once the treaty is finalized." A ripple of approval passed through the bridge, the sound of predators anticipating easy prey. Far away, unseen, Umbra's ship shifted position with the precision of a chess master moving pieces into place. Back on Luna, Elias stood with Patel in the command chamber, watching the Empire's fleet advance deeper into Sol space with the arrogance of conquerors. "They're moving toward the belt," Patel said. "Mining probes already deploying." Elias's jaw tightened. "They think the system is theirs." "And now?" Patel asked, her hand hovering over the authorization console. Elias paused, weighing the years of secrecy, the incalculable risk, the terrible cost of action against the unbearable cost of inaction. Then he spoke with the certainty that had eluded him for decades. "Now we remind them that Earth learned patience the hard way." Patel placed her hand on the console and entered the final authorization code with steady fingers. "Umbra is no longer theoretical," she said, her voice carrying the weight of history. "Commander, you have full operational control." Elias straightened, feeling the mantle settle on his shoulders. "Understood." That night across Earth, people slept uneasily. News feeds speculated, argued, reassured in endless cycles. No one mentioned the faint shimmer above the atmosphere. No one saw the shadows forming a silent ring around their world, a crown of invisible thorns. In his private quarters, Elias activated Hannah's old recording once more. Her voice filled the room, softer now, almost intimate, as if she were standing beside him again. "If this ever gets used," she said, her expression growing serious, "promise me one thing." Elias whispered to the ghost. "Anything. Don't become what you're afraid of." The recording ended, leaving only silence and memory. Elias stood and keyed the fleet channel. "Umbra," he said, voice steady as steel. "Hold position. Let them think we're afraid. Tomorrow, we show them what preparation looks like." The stars outside remained quiet, indifferent to the drama of small creatures. But the shadows were awake, and they were watching. The solar wind was calm, the stars indifferent witnesses. The Imperial fleet drifted in perfect alignment near the asteroid belt, its dreadnoughts reflecting cold sunlight like blades waiting to fall. Tavrik stood at the observation dome of the Tormentum Rex, pleased with the silence that greeted his ultimatum. Earth hadn't responded to the annexation of Titan Station. No resistance, no retaliation, nothing but the silence of the conquered. "They're docile," he said aloud, tail flicking with satisfaction. "Predictable. We prod, and they tremble." A junior officer interrupted, his voice uncertain. "Marshal, we've lost contact with Veyron's Pike near Mars orbit." Tavrik didn't turn from the viewport. "Glitch. Realigned satellites. The humans don't have strike capability beyond Luna." The officer hesitated, his training warring with his instincts. "We've also lost Kesh Vera and Ridden Claw. Both confirmed missing from the grid. No debris, no distress signals, just..." Tavrik slowly turned, eyes narrowing to slits. "Show me." A tactical map flickered to life. 3 Imperial destroyers had vanished from formation. Just gone. No energy wake, no weapons fire, no trace, as if someone had erased them mid-thought like words from a page. On the far side of the moon, Elias Rain stood at a cold terminal, eyes fixed on his own fleet tracker. 3 green markers pulsed silently, each one a small miracle of physics and audacity. Each one marked a successful teleport strike, precision that would have seemed impossible hours ago. "Clean hits," reported Captain Yun from Umbra 9, her voice carrying professional pride. "0 casualties. Imperial crews disabled and teleported back aboard their own command ships. No permanent damage, just confusion and missing vessels." Elias nodded, allowing himself the smallest smile. "Perfect. Let them scramble." The Tormentum Rex's command deck turned frantic, controlled chaos spreading like wildfire. Tavrik paced slowly, his rage not loud but focused, all the more dangerous for its precision. "Sensor sweeps," he commanded. "Full skin from Jupiter to Sol. Look for cloaking signatures, electromagnetic distortions, pulse anomalies, anything." "We're finding nothing, Marshal," one engineer replied, his voice cracking. "If this is human technology, it's not cloaking. It's something else entirely." Tavrik's voice lowered to a dangerous whisper. "That's not possible." Another voice crackled over the fleet-wide channel, cutting through Imperial protocols with casual authority. A man's voice, calm, deep, unmistakably human. "This is Commander Elias Rain of the Terran Defense Initiative. You came here expecting fear. You found calculation. You came for conquest. You walked into a chessboard." Tavrik froze, every muscle locked. "Your ships will vanish one by one. Your weapons will be removed before they're fired. We are not playing your game. We rewrote the board." The message ended, leaving silence more profound than any threat. Then panic erupted. "Marshal, 4 more ships just disappeared." An officer stammered, his professionalism crumbling. "Sensors show nothing. We're blind out here." Tavrik slammed a clawed fist into the console, the metal buckling under the impact. "How? They have no jump gates, no warp signatures. This..." He paused, and a hollow pit opened in his chest as understanding dawned. Teleportation. It had long been theorized in the Empire's scientific circles. Discussed, debated, dismissed as unstable, impossible to control. Every attempt in their 40,000-year history had ended in disaster, in ships torn apart by gravitational shear. But Earth, primitive Earth, had done it. And worse, they'd kept it quiet, hidden in plain sight, while the Empire laughed. Back at Luna Command, the room pulsed with hushed electricity. The first real engagement was complete. 9 ships incapacitated without a single shot fired. No fatalities, no destruction, just surgical precision. Every Umbra vessel had returned to its previous position, unnoticed by the civilian world sleeping below. Elias stood before a galactic broadcast terminal, the weight of the moment settling on him. Vass handed him a data chip, her expression a mix of pride and terror. "This is going everywhere," she said. "Everywhere?" Elias confirmed. "The entire galaxy. Time for them to hear a new language." He stepped in front of the camera, straightened his uniform, and began to speak with the calm authority of a man who had prepared for this moment for 20 years. "To the peoples of the Galactic Empire, and to those beyond their reach, we are Terrans. For centuries we watched. For decades we built. We did not rise in violence, nor spread through conquest. We walked quietly because we knew what arrogance sounded like. You laughed at us, called us primitives, dismissed us as children playing in the dust." His voice hardened, steel wrapped in silk. "And while you laughed, we built ships that vanish, engines that fold the dark, weapons that do not kill but remove the option to fight. We will not be your subjects. We will not be your slaves. We are not afraid." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze seeming to pierce through the camera to every being who would see this message. "This is your only warning. Leave our system, or be removed from it." The transmission cut to black. News exploded across the galaxy like a supernova. Stations from the Trade Conclave to the far-flung Drea clusters replayed Elias's message on endless loops. Millions watched in stunned silence as clips of the Umbra fleet, finally visible and revealed, shimmered in low Earth orbit like daggers guarding a jewel. The ships moved with an otherworldly grace, appearing and disappearing in ways that defied every known law of physics. The Empire's allies hesitated, suddenly uncertain. Vassal races whispered in dark corners, hope kindling where none had existed before. Some cheered openly, risking retribution for the first time in generations. Tavrik sat alone in his quarters, reviewing surveillance footage in disbelief. Ship captains panicked, formations fell apart, energy was desperately rerouted to shields that couldn't stop an enemy that never occupied the space between departure and arrival. The Tormentum Rex rattled as something massive displaced the fabric of space nearby. He looked out the viewport. A black ship hovered there, impossibly close, no engines, no glow, just presence. Solid. Real. Terrifying. A single line appeared on his personal display. "You blinked first." The Umbra vessel vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only the stars and Tavrik's reflection in the glass. Tavrik stared at the empty space where the ship had been, fists clenched so tight his claws drew blood from his own palms. "Prepare the Eclipse cannon," he hissed, his voice venomous. "But Marshal, High Command has not authorized." "I said prepare it." His roar echoed through the chamber. "If Earth wants fear, they'll be reminded why the Empire has ruled the stars for 40 millennia." Back on Luna, Vass approached Elias at the command station, her expression cautiously optimistic. "Your message worked. They're stalled. Movement patterns disrupted. Half their fleet is just holding position, waiting for orders." Elias didn't smile, didn't celebrate. "They're calculating. Arrogance doesn't surrender. It recalibrates, adapts, escalates." Patel joined them via encrypted link, her image crystallizing on the holodisplay. "What's our next move?" Elias answered without hesitation, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "We show them that silence isn't weakness. It's precision." He turned back to the star map, studying the Imperial positions with the focus of a master strategist. One more move, then checkmate. The Tormentum Rex vibrated with restrained fury, every system humming with lethal intent. The charging cycle for the Eclipse cannon began, ticking upward with inexorable momentum. A slow hum built in the deck plates, the kind that grew into a scream before unleashing devastation capable of cracking a planet's core. Grand Marshal Tavrik stood at the command dais, eyes locked on the rotating blue sphere that was Earth, so small, so fragile, so infuriatingly defiant. Target lock confirmed. His weapons officer reported, voice tight with anticipation. Planetary core alignment in process. 5 minutes to full charge. Tavrik didn't respond immediately. He stared through the viewport, not at Earth, but at his own reflection superimposed over it. Something in his eyes had shifted. Not doubt, not yet, but a flicker of realization creeping through the certainty. These humans were not panicked. They weren't overwhelmed. They were waiting, watching, patient as death itself. Dispatch the strike order, he said at last, his voice lacking its usual conviction. No one moved. The bridge had gone deathly still. Is there a problem? He growled, turning to face his crew. A tactical officer turned toward him, pale and sweating. Marshal, we've lost positioning control. What? The Tormentum Rex. It's moving. Impossible. There were no thrusters engaged. No gravitational tethers disrupted. No course corrections initiated. And yet, impossibly, the stars outside began to drift. Not by thrust, but by displacement, reality bending around them. Space warped, twisted, folded. And then, with a silent, sickening snap that every soul aboard felt in their bones, they were somewhere else entirely. Lunar Command lit up with alerts, every screen flashing. The command staff stood frozen, watching in disbelief as the massive red icon labeled Tormentum Rex reappeared on their orbital grid. Is that? Vass blinked, unable to complete the thought. They're inside moon orbit. How the hell did? They didn't move, Elias said, his voice carrying quiet triumph. We moved them. The Tormentum Rex now hovered less than 1,000 kilometers above the lunar surface, surrounded by 20 Umbra ships, sleek, black, patient as coiled serpents. Tavrik's fleet remained near Jupiter, too far to respond in time, too scattered to mount any coordinated rescue. Panic swept the command deck like a tidal wave. We're inside their gravity well. Eclipse cannon is disabled. All escort vessels out of effective range. Tavrik stood utterly still, his mind racing through implications and impossibilities. Then a soft chime sounded, polite and terrifying in its mundanity. A voice followed, smooth, unhurried, carrying the weight of absolute control. Grand Marshal Tavrik, this is Commander Elias Rain. You've breached a no-fly zone. We've relocated your vessel for de-escalation purposes. Tavrik's claws flexed involuntarily. You dare speak to me like a courier? Elias continued as if he hadn't spoken, his tone almost conversational. We could have destroyed your fleet. We chose not to. We could have erased your flagship, scattered its atoms across the solar wind. Instead, we delivered it back to your front door. This is not mercy, Marshal. It's instruction. You blinked. We didn't. The message ended, leaving only static and the sound of Tavrik's ragged breathing. Outside the viewport, Umbra's ships remained perfectly still, but the threat in their silence was louder than any cannon, more absolute than any declaration of war. In the galactic core, news erupted in real time, spreading through networks faster than light itself. Footage leaked from multiple sources, civilian ships, neutral observers, even Imperial vessels whose crews could no longer maintain the fiction of control. The flagship of the Imperial Navy, the pride of an empire that had stood for 40,000 years, displaced without warning, surrounded by Terran ships no one had ever seen before. No jump trails, no energy signatures, no escorts, just precision so clean it looked like magic. Neutral systems convened emergency summits within hours. Member states debated sanctions, reconsidered alliances. Whispers of rebellion echoed through the outer colonies, growing from murmurs to shouts. The myth of Imperial invincibility had cracked, and the entire galaxy watched the fractures spread. Earth, primitive, isolated Earth, had made it happen with nothing but patience and impossible science. Inside the Tormentum Rex, Tavrik stood motionless at the viewport, his officers staring at him, waiting for a command that didn't come, that couldn't come. He'd spent a lifetime teaching lesser species to fear power, to tremble before the Empire's might. Now he understood something far worse than overt force. Quiet power. Measured retaliation. The kind that didn't need to roar because its whisper could move planets. He turned to his crew, each face reflecting his own uncertainty. Stand down. A silence fell thicker than gravity itself, heavier than the weight of empires. On Earth, people flooded rooftops and windows, looking up at the night sky. They couldn't see the Umbra fleet with the naked eye, couldn't perceive the dance of displaced reality happening above their heads. But something had changed. They felt it in their bones, in the sudden shift from terror to possibility. Panic had given way to awe. In classrooms, students whispered excitedly about teleporting ships. In bunkers, generals stood down from emergency protocols that had been active for days. Civilians breathed again, properly, deeply, for the first time since the Empire's arrival. At Luna Command, General Patel appeared on the central holographic screen, her expression carefully neutral. "We've intercepted a full retreat directive from the Imperial fleet," she said, her voice carrying the weight of history. "Tavrik's vessel is withdrawing under escort. All remaining units are falling back to deep space." Vass let out a low breath, half laugh, half disbelief. "They're actually running." "No," Elias replied, watching the retreating contacts on the tactical display. "They're recalculating." Patel nodded slowly. "So are we. Earth is no longer an observer, Commander. The galaxy will come knocking, and not all of them will be hostile. Some will seek alliance, others will test our resolve. Everything changes from this moment." Elias turned from the screen, exhaustion and triumph warring in his expression. "Let them knock. We'll answer." Hours later, the sky cleared completely. No traces of the confrontation remained. No wreckage, no evidence except the footage spreading through galactic networks. Just Earth and its moon, quiet again, deceptively peaceful. Elias stood atop a ridge in the Andes, wind tugging at his coat, the thin air sharp in his lungs. He held a small cube in his hand, Hannah's final research log, worn smooth by years of handling. He pressed play, knowing the words by heart but needing to hear her voice. "If the theory holds," her voice said, bright and tired all at once, carrying the enthusiasm that had defined her, "we won't have to run. We'll bend distance like paper, fold space like origami. Not for war, Eli. Just so no one can corner us again, so no one can take what we love." Her image paused, looking directly at the camera, directly at him across the years. "Promise me if it works, don't use it to become them. Don't let the power corrupt what we're trying to protect." The message ended, her face freezing in that moment of hope and warning. He closed his fist around the cube, feeling its slight warmth against his palm. "No," he whispered to the wind, to her memory, to the future they'd built together. "We used it to end them. Not with blood, not with conquest, but with silence that could move stars." The wind carried his words away, scattering them across mountains that had stood for millions of years and would stand for millions more. Below, Earth turned in the darkness, no longer prey, no longer isolated. Humanity had spoken its first word in the galactic conversation, and that word was simple, powerful, undeniable. No. And the stars, for the first time in 40,000 years, listened.